7 essential things in a Stoic's journey. There is a moment in every Stoic's journey that separates the unaware from the awake. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside. No crowds cheer. No thunder splits the sky. But inside, something irreversible begins. It is the moment you realize that the greatest conflict in your life is not with the world, but with yourself. Not with your circumstances or your enemies, or even your past. The real war is the one you've been fighting silently every day, between who you are and who you pretend to be, between what you know is right and what you repeatedly allow. This is the fracture, the rupture between the life you live and the life you're capable of living. And until you see it, nothing can truly change. Most people never get here. They spend their days outrunning discomfort, numbing their own signals, blaming everything external for the way they feel. They scroll, they escape, they drink, they explode. They live on autopilot, trapped in patterns so old they've become invisible. But a Stoic pauses, a Stoic questions, a Stoic notices. And in that noticing, the war begins to come into view. It's not a war of swords and shields, it's a war of moments. The moment you stay silent when truth is burning in your chest. The moment you seek approval, knowing it costs your integrity. The moment you lie to yourself that you're fine, when something deep inside you knows you're not. These moments don't look like battles, but they are. And the longer they go unrecognized, the deeper the fracture becomes. You stop trusting yourself. You stop feeling, you stop growing, you live, but you are no longer alive. Awareness is painful. That's why most avoid it. Because the second you become aware of the gap between your behavior and your values, you are forced to choose, either close the gap or live in hypocrisy. There is no third path. And yet, this is where the Stoic path begins. Not with reading Marcus Aurelius or memorizing quotes, but with seeing your own contradictions with brutal honesty. Not to shame yourself, but to awaken yourself, because you cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot master what you do not acknowledge. The Stoic doesn't run from this discomfort. He walks into it. He welcomes it. Because he knows that nothing real can be built on a false foundation. If the house is cracking, the first step is not decorating it. The first step is exposing the damage. Looking at the beams, feeling the weakness, naming the decay. That is awareness. That is the fracture. And that is where power begins. This is not a quick revelation. It's not a single journal entry or meditation. It's a state of alertness you must cultivate every day. Listening to your reactions, questioning your assumptions, noticing when you're about to say something you don't mean or compromise on something you value. These are not small things. These are your signals. They are the battle maps of your soul. The Stoic becomes a strategist in his own mind. He doesn't just feel anger, he dissects it. He doesn't just react, he investigates. Why did I feel that? What story did I tell myself? What part of me was threatened? This is how the war is won. Not with suppression, but with understanding. Not with control, but with clarity. Some will hear this and think it sounds exhausting. But let me ask you, is it not already exhausting to live without direction? To fall apart over things that shouldn't shake you? To feel like a prisoner in your own reactions? You're already tired. The question is, will you be tired from being a slave to your impulses, or tired from forging discipline into peace? The fracture doesn't mean you are broken. It means you are finally ready to stop lying to yourself. It means your soul is no longer willing to be silent while your habits betray it. It means the war is no longer hidden, and once it's no longer hidden, it can finally be won. This is where the Stoic begins, in the rubble, in the tension, in the unbearable recognition of truth. He does not turn away. He leans in, because he knows that while the truth might hurt for a moment, illusion wounds forever. Most people live as if the world owes them stability, as if peace is something that must come from others behaving correctly, from circumstances aligning, from life obeying their desires, but nothing could be further from the truth. You will not find peace in the outside world, not in your job, not in your partner, not in your success, because the moment any of those change, and they will, you're left exposed, adrift, fragile. You lose the illusion of control, and suddenly your peace disappears with it. The Stoic does not anchor himself to things that move. He anchors himself to something deeper, something internal, something unshakable. This is emotional gravity, and without it, you will always be at the mercy of whatever storm rises next. Emotional gravity is not a lack of feeling, it is the presence of command. It is the ability to feel fully without being dominated by those feelings. You don't deny the pain, you don't numb the anxiety, you acknowledge them, but you do not obey them. You hold the emotion in your hands like a stone in water, heavy, yes, but unmoved. You do not sink with it, you stay grounded. This is not something you're born with. It's something you build, day by day, moment by moment. It begins when you stop identifying with your reactions. You are not your anger. You are not your craving. You are not your jealousy or your grief. You are the observer of those things. You are the one who chooses what comes next. And that power, the space between stimulus and response, that is where the Stoic lives. You will be tested. Someone will disrespect you. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will take from you what you thought was yours. And in that space, where others would lash out, collapse or spiral, you will pause, not because you're passive, but because you are anchored. Because you do not give your dignity away for free. Because your mood is not for sale to the lowest bidder. Anchoring yourself in virtue, in reason, in justice, in discipline, in courage, means you don't have to chase balance. You become balance. You don't beg the world to be fair. You choose to be fair even when the world isn't. You don't demand respect from others. You act in a way that commands your own. To build this anchor, you must train your perception. Start with the simplest practice, observing your triggers. You will notice that most of your suffering doesn't come from what happened, but from the meaning you attach to it. He didn't reply. She looked at me that way. They didn't appreciate me. And from that a whole narrative forms. But what if you pause the story? What if you caught the first spark before it lit the entire forest? That pause is your power. That moment of observation is your practice. Do not underestimate the force of small, consistent restraint. When you learn to catch yourself mid-reaction and choose composure instead, you begin to rewire the entire architecture of your nervous system. You begin to walk into situations that used to dismantle you and feel nothing. Not coldness, not apathy, but calm. The calm of someone who is no longer governed by chaos. The calm of someone who has chosen their center and refuses to be dragged away from it. Think of an anchor dropped in deep water. The wind moves the surface. The waves crash and churn. But beneath all that noise, there is a still point holding firm. That is who you must become. That is the essence of Stoic gravity. To walk through rage and confusion, heartbreak and disappointment and remain inwardly rooted. People will ask what your secret is, how you remain so composed, how you don't get dragged into every conflict or every drama, and you won't need to explain. Your presence will speak louder than your words. Your calm will be your argument. Your clarity will be your proof. Most people never develop this. They remain emotional hostages, dependent on the world to behave so they can feel okay. But the Stoic chooses a different path, not because it's easier, but because it's stronger. Not because it feels good, but because it is good. You are not meant to drift endlessly with every current. You are meant to plant your feet in the storm and remember who you are, not your past, not your wounds, not your title or your following or your bank account, but your character. That is your anchor. That is your weight. That is what will hold you when everything else is trying to pull you under. The modern world has done everything in its power to make discipline look unattractive. It paints it as something cold, harsh, robotic. It celebrates ease. It glorifies convenience. It tells you that comfort is the goal, that struggle is a flaw in the system. But what it never tells you is the cost of a life without discipline. What happens when you never develop structure, never challenge your own impulses, never hold yourself to anything beyond how you feel in the moment? The cost is subtle at first. You miss a few things. You give in once or twice. You compromise here and there. But soon, you wake up one day and realize you don't respect yourself. You don't trust your own word. You've become a stranger to your potential. A Stoic doesn't wait for motivation. He doesn't need the stars to align or the mood to be perfect. He understands that discipline is not punishment, it is power. It is the quiet fire that builds a man from the inside out, and it does not require attention, it does not scream, it does not boast. It shows up in silence, early mornings, uncelebrated effort, repeated decisions that nobody sees but you. It is not the dramatic gesture, it is the steady hand, the daily sharpening of the blade. To live with discipline is to reject the worship of feeling. It is to choose action over excuses, principles over preferences, direction over dopamine. The Stoic wakes when it's time to rise, not because he wants to, but because it is aligned with his purpose. He trains his body and mind, not to impress others, but to master himself. He chooses what is useful, not what is easy. He keeps his word when no one is watching, and because of that he begins to walk differently, not with arrogance but with inner order. Discipline is not just in routines, it's in restraint. It's in knowing you could speak and choosing silence, knowing you could indulge and choosing temperance, knowing you could lash out and choosing poise. That is not weakness. That is strength refined, strength without noise, strength that doesn't need to announce itself because it is already known internally. There's a kind of suffering that builds you, the voluntary kind, the kind you choose because you understand that ease breeds weakness. The Stoic doesn't chase suffering for its own sake. That would be vanity. But he accepts it as part of the path. He sees discomfort not as a threat, but as a forge. He walks into it willingly, knowing it will either burn away the excess or reveal the truth. You cannot develop character without resistance. You cannot build endurance without pain. And you cannot become sovereign over yourself if you're always seeking comfort. There will be days when you don't feel like doing what must be done. The mind will try to negotiate, delay, sabotage. But the Stoic does not enter into debate with weakness. He simply acts, without drama, without applause, without needing to feel inspired. That's what makes the fire different. It's not chaotic, it's contained, directed, purposeful. It doesn't burn everything down. It burns away what doesn't belong. It is the force that creates clarity out of chaos, precision out of potential. It turns hesitation into motion and motion into momentum. The fire is not a phase. It is not something you switch on when it's convenient. It becomes who you are. It shows up in how you carry yourself, how you handle boredom, how you face temptation. It is there in the early hours when no one else is awake. In the quiet moments when quitting would be easier. In the split-second choices that no one else will ever know about, but that you will live with forever. Most people want transformation without price. They want the results without the rhythm. They want change, but they don't want the repetition, the solitude, the sacrifice. The Stoic knows that without fire, there is no forge. Without tension, there is no tempering. Without discipline, there is no freedom. Discipline is not the enemy of your soul. It is the structure that holds your soul together when life tries to break it apart. It is the frame you return to when the world is loud, when your emotions flare, when your will is tested. It is your return point, your internal compass, your fire. If you do not choose your habits will choose for you. If you do not master your time will be consumed by triviality. And if you do not train your character, it will be shaped by everything weaker around you. So choose the fire, not because it's easy, but because it makes you strong enough to stand in a world that constantly pulls people apart, strong enough to become the kind of person you yourself would follow, strong enough to become unshakable. There comes a point in the Stoic journey when discipline alone is not enough. You can wake early, train your body, control your words, master your reactions. But if you are not willing to look at yourself with unflinching honesty, you will never truly grow. Because discipline without self-examination becomes routine, and routine without reflection becomes hollow. This is where the mirror enters the path. Not the mirror of vanity or appearance, but the mirror of truth, the reflection that does not flatter, does not hide, does not lie. The mirror that asks you the question no one else dares to: who are you really? The hardest battle is not against what others think of you, it is against what you secretly know about yourself. You can fool the world, you can perform strength, you can rehearse wisdom, But when the noise dies and you are left alone with your thoughts, the truth remains. You know where you've been dishonest. You know where you've been weak. You know what you've been avoiding. And you know the gap between the image you project and the life you actually live. That awareness cannot be escaped. It waits for you every night when you close your eyes. It waits in the silence. And the Stoic does not run from it. He faces it. Seneca once wrote about reviewing the day as if standing before a judge, recounting every word, every action, every thought, not to indulge guilt, but to correct the soul. He did not call it punishment. He called it medicine, because only by seeing the wound can it be healed. The mirror is not there to destroy you. It is there to show you where to build. Most people avoid this work. They drown their conscience in distractions. They surround themselves with noise so they never have to hear the whisper within. They would rather be entertained than examined, but the cost is their integrity. Their character fractures slowly until they can no longer tell the difference between who they are and who they pretend to be. The Stoic refuses that fate. He takes the mirror in hand and accepts what he sees, however painful, however uncomfortable, because only what is faced can be changed. The practice of reflection is simple, but not easy. At the end of the day, you sit in silence and review. Where did I act in line with my values? Where did I betray them? Where did I let anger decide for me? Where did I let fear hold me back? Where did I speak when silence would have been wiser? Where did I remain silent when truth should have been spoken? These are not accusations, they are observations. They are the notes of a craftsman refining his work. You are the sculptor and the stone, shaping yourself through awareness. But radical honesty requires courage, because the mirror does not just reveal your faults, it also reveals your potential. It shows you the gap between what you are and what you could be, and that gap can feel unbearable. But the Stoic does not collapse under it. He uses it as fuel. He does not hate himself for his failures. He learns from them. He does not cling to the past. He prepares for the next day. He does not let shame paralyze him. He lets truth mobilize him. The mirror is not about perfection. It is about alignment. Each night you bring yourself back to center. You correct the drift. You remind yourself that your power lies not in yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's fears, but in today's choices. You become sharper, cleaner, more whole. Slowly, day by day, you begin to live in such a way that the reflection no longer terrifies you. Instead, it becomes your ally. The mirror becomes not a judge, but a companion, a source of clarity, a reminder that you are not here to pretend, but to progress. To live without self-honesty is to live in exile from yourself. You may gain approval, wealth, even status, but inside you will always know it is hollow. To live with self-honesty is to walk in alignment, even if no one else understands it. It is to find peace not in how you are seen, but in who you are when no one is watching. That is the kind of freedom no one can take from you. The world is full of people terrified of their own reflection. The Stoic chooses the opposite path. He turns toward it. He accepts the discomfort, and he allows truth to become his teacher, because he knows that no enemy outside of him could ever be as dangerous as the enemy within, and no ally as powerful as a soul aligned with itself. There's a kind of power that doesn't need to raise its voice, a kind of presence that doesn't seek attention, a kind of control that doesn't come from force, but from restraint. That power is silence, and the Stoic understands it not as absence, but as mastery. Not the silence of fear or passivity, but the silence of someone who has nothing to prove, someone who has trained himself not to respond to every flame with fire, someone who is no longer controlled by the noise of the world or the noise within. Most people speak as a reaction. They feel a discomfort, a threat, a shift in energy, and they rush to fill the space with words. They defend themselves, attack others, justify their choices, explain their emotions, seek approval. But beneath that flood of speech is one thing: fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being in control, fear of seeming weak, fear of silence itself. Because silence reveals the state of your soul, and most people aren't ready to hear what theirs is saying. The Stoic trains himself differently. He learns to pause, to wait, to observe the moment before entering it, to resist the pull to explain, to react, to win. And in that pause he becomes untouchable, because the man who controls his reaction controls the outcome. The man who does not speak out of impulse does not have to apologize later. The man who can remain calm when provoked possesses a strength few ever earn. This kind of silence is not weakness. It is the silence of a lion who does not flinch when barked at. It is the silence of a mountain that does not move when the wind screams. It is the silence of someone who has already wrestled with his ego and no longer serves it. You do not need to reply to every insult. You do not need to defend every opinion. You do not need to fix every misunderstanding. Your peace is not found in being right. It is found in being rooted. And yet this mastery of silence is not only about speech. It's about energy. How quickly do you let your emotions take over? How often do you let someone else decide your state of mind? The Stoic notices these inner storms, not to suppress them, but to command them. He feels the rising wave of frustration, and he names it. He observes the sting of ego, and he breathes. He catches the story being written in his mind, the judgment, the fear, the pride, and instead of acting on it, he lets it pass. Because he has trained himself to be the master, not the puppet. The world is addicted to reactivity. Outrage is currency. Victimhood is status. Arguments are entertainment. And in this noise, silence becomes rebellion. The man who speaks with intention, who replies only when it serves virtue, who refuses to let petty things shake his foundation, he becomes an anomaly. And that anomaly becomes magnetic. Because in a world of overreaction, restraint is rare, and what is rare commands respect. But this silence must come from within. It cannot be faked. If it is rooted in fear, it will collapse under pressure. If it is used to avoid truth, it will rot into passivity. True Stoic silence comes from alignment, the alignment of character and reason. You are not silent because you're afraid. You are silent because you are free. Free from needing to win the argument. Free from needing to defend your pride, free from being pulled by every emotion that rises in you. And when you do speak, your words carry weight. Because they are not diluted by noise. They are not thrown carelessly into the air. They are chosen, shaped, sharpened. The Stoic speaks like a sculptor, not to impress, but to express only what is necessary, what is useful, what is true. And in doing so, he becomes someone others listen to, even in silence. Most people spend their lives trying to be heard. The Stoic spends his life trying to be clear. And clarity does not require volume. It requires vision. When you speak from a place of calm, not chaos, from clarity, not compulsion, even a whisper becomes thunder. So learn to hold the pause. Learn to sit with discomfort. Learn to let others misunderstand you without panic. Learn to let the storm pass without jumping into it. That is where your power begins, not in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. Not in how fast you reply, but in how deeply you see. The world will test you. It will provoke you, misread you, question you, tempt you. Let it. You are not here to control the world, you are here to control yourself. That is the task of the Stoic. That is the mastery of silence. Choosing your environment with wisdom and shaping your character through those you permit close. You can be disciplined, you can be grounded, you can even master your reactions. But if you surround yourself with the wrong voices, you will eventually become someone you never chose to be. That's the danger most people ignore. They work on themselves in isolation, but leave the gates of their mind wide open. They treat influence as accidental. They underestimate the silent power of proximity. But the Stoic does not. He understands that character is not only built by effort, it is shaped by exposure. You absorb more than you notice. The way people around you speak, the way they handle failure, what they laugh at, what they tolerate, what they celebrate. All of it becomes part of your internal wiring. And if you are not deliberate about your circle, your standards will begin to shrink, not from weakness, but from adaptation. You will start to justify mediocrity. You will begin to explain away behavior that once would have disgusted you. Not because you chose it, but because you normalized it. The Stoic does not isolate himself from the world, but he curates it. He chooses what enters his ears and eyes with the same care a warrior chooses his armor. He understands that just as poison in small doses can still kill, so can the wrong company. A friend who gossips without principle, a mentor who lacks integrity, a group that rewards distraction, laziness, victimhood. It may feel harmless, it may feel familiar, but over time, it becomes dangerous. You become what you tolerate. Epictetus said, "Avoid the vulgar for the sake of the noble." This is not about arrogance, it is about alignment. If your values matter, then the people around you must reflect them, or at least not threaten them. If your peace matters, then you must protect it. If your growth matters, then you cannot share space with people who mock discipline, sabotage clarity, or reward impulsiveness. You cannot spend your days sharpening your sword and your nights leaving it out to rust. Choosing your circle is not about building a wall. It is about building a foundation. You don't need a crowd, you need truth. One friend with virtue is worth more than 10 with charm. One mentor with substance is worth more than 100 with popularity. One conversation with depth is worth more than hours of empty talk. But this requires courage, because sometimes the people you need to step back from are the ones closest to you, the ones you've grown used to, the ones who've shaped your past but no longer belong in your future. And this is where most people hesitate. They confuse loyalty with stagnation. They think walking away is betrayal, but staying in spaces that keep you small, that is the real betrayal. Betrayal of who you are becoming. The Stoic chooses, not from anger, not from superiority, but from clarity. He does not wait until he is drained, disrespected, or dismantled. He sees the drift early and makes the shift. He knows that his time is limited and that his attention is currency. And he spends both only where there is alignment, respect, and reciprocity. This extends beyond people. It includes content, environments, daily inputs, what you read, what you watch, what you listen to. These are your silent teachers, and most people let them in without question. But the Stoic asks, does this make me stronger or weaker, clearer or more confused, more aligned or more divided? If it weakens him, it is removed, not with noise, but with finality. You do not owe anyone your energy. You owe yourself integrity. That means choosing silence over gossip, depth over attention, growth over comfort. It means letting go of people who pull you into drama, who reward chaos, who drain you through subtle sabotage. It means surrounding yourself with those who challenge your mind, who sharpen your values, who hold you to your word. This path will be lonely at times, but that loneliness is not emptiness. It is space being cleared for something higher. It is the silence that makes room for truth, and over time those who belong on your journey will reveal themselves, not through charm, but through character. You cannot become who you are meant to be while dragging the weight of who you used to be, and often that weight wears the face of old relationships. The Stoic does not hate them, but he does not stay for them either. He moves forward, because he knows that nothing noble can be built on rotten soil. And his life, his peace, his clarity, his mission, is too important to leave exposed to corrosion. So choose your circle with the precision of a sculptor and the discernment of a king, because the voices you allow in your life will either build your soul or bury it. All mastery leads to one question. Now that you have built yourself, what will you serve? Because self-control without contribution is incomplete. Clarity without direction becomes self-absorption. Strength without purpose becomes vanity. The Stoic journey does not end with personal peace. It points beyond it, towards something higher, something greater, something that outlives you. The final test of the Stoic is not how well he controls himself, but how deeply he serves the world. Modern life pushes the opposite idea. It teaches you to accumulate, to seek status, visibility, control, to turn inward not for introspection, but for isolation. You become the project, the brand, the main character. But none of that satisfies. And eventually, no matter how much you control your habits, your emotions, your thoughts, there's an emptiness that discipline alone cannot fill. Because we were not made just to endure. We were made to elevate. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. He could have indulged in luxury, in power, in legacy. But his journals speak of service, of being a part of something vast and interconnected. He reminds himself not to be a man of anger or complaint, but one of usefulness. That's the shift, from control to contribution, from mastery to meaning, from the self to the whole. You were not given strength to keep it to yourself. You were not given clarity just to feel superior. The wisdom you earn through silence, the gravity you've built through discipline, the peace you've reclaimed through awareness, all of it is meant to overflow into others, into the world, into moments where your presence becomes a calm in someone else's storm. The Stoic becomes a living offering. His presence relieves anxiety. His restraint diffuses tension. His discipline inspires others not through words, but by example. He does not preach, he embodies. And in doing so, he becomes the antidote to the chaos around him. Not by force, but by alignment. This does not mean you must save the world. It means you must carry yourself in such a way that the space around you becomes clearer. It means that every conversation, every decision, every challenge becomes an opportunity to live your values outwardly, to stand in integrity when it would be easier to compromise, to speak with kindness when others speak with malice, to act with patience when time feels tight. These are offerings, and they are powerful. But to live this way requires detachment from the ego. You must let go of being seen, let go of needing to be thanked, let go of recognition. The Stoic does not serve to be admired. He serves because it is right, because it is the final expression of his character, because it is the natural result of an ordered soul. You may never be applauded for your effort. You may never be understood. But the reward is not in praise. The reward is in knowing that you have not wasted what was given to you, that your strength was not hoarded, that your clarity was not hidden, that your life meant something, even if only in small, invisible ways. The final shift of the Stoic is from personal survival to sacred responsibility. You are no longer just a man seeking peace. You are a man who brings it. You are no longer just a woman of resilience. You are a woman who raises others with her presence. You become a living philosophy, a steady light, a clean flame, the kind of soul whose absence would be felt not because of noise or glory, but because of the invisible order you brought into the world around you. This is not a burden. It is the highest honor. To live not as a consumer, but as a contributor. To rise each day and ask not what the world owes you, but what part of your discipline, your silence, your clarity can be given, not through sacrifice, but through strength, not through obligation, but through conviction. And in this way, your life becomes something more than an individual journey. It becomes an offering, a legacy not written in words, but in the quiet impact you had on those who crossed your path. You become the kind of person whose presence makes others believe they can be better, not because you told them to, but because you showed them how. There is no final arrival, no finish line where the Stoic sets down his tools and says, "I am done." Because this path, the path of discipline, of silence, of self-examination, of virtue, is not a destination. It is a rhythm, a choice renewed daily, a walk that stretches across a lifetime, and beyond it, in the traces it leaves in others. The world will never stop testing you, your mind will never stop tempting you, and your soul will never stop seeking something higher. This is the nature of the journey. It does not end, it deepens. You will rise early, and some days you will fail. You will try to remain calm, and some days you will be shaken. You will set your intentions and then feel them crumble under pressure. That does not make you unworthy. It makes you human. The Stoic path does not demand perfection. It demands presence. You do not walk it so you can never fall. You walk it so that when you do fall, you rise quickly, cleanly, without losing yourself in shame or story. You correct, you realign, and you keep moving forward, because what matters is not how often you stumble, but how often you return to what is true. You return to your silence. You return to your breath. You return to your reason. You return to your mirror. You return to the fire. You return to the question, who am I becoming? That is the compass, not applause, not comfort, not external markers of success. The compass is always, what kind of soul am I building today? And the truth is, no one will walk this path for you. Others may inspire, others may challenge, but no one can do your work. No one can sit in silence on your behalf. No one can make your choices for you when your emotions rage. No one can clean your conscience, carry your regrets, or build your discipline. This is your task, your calling, your contract with the life you've been given. That is why the Stoic is quiet, because he knows the weight of this path, because he is not here to perform it, he is here to live it, in private, in tension, in moments that may never be seen but that shape who he becomes when everything is on the line. That is the work, not public, not dramatic, but real. The world will try to distract you. It will try to tell you that peace comes from being accepted, being envied, being desired. It will pull you toward noise, toward surface, toward speed, and that is why you must remain grounded. Not just once, not just for a season, but again and again. You must build your stillness like a fortress. You must protect your reason like a flame in the wind. You must treat your values not like decorations, but like armor. Because if you do not choose your direction, the world will choose it for you. If you do not master your impulses, they will master you. If you do not walk your own path with clarity and courage, you will find yourself living a life that doesn't feel like your own. And that is the deepest form of regret. So you return to the fracture, where you saw your patterns for the first time, to the anchor, where you built your stillness, to the fire, where you forged your strength, to the mirror, where you told yourself the truth, to the silence, where you reclaimed your power, to the circle where you chose your inputs, to the offering where you gave your strength to something greater. And now you return to the beginning, but not as the same person. You return with clarity, with scars that taught you, with habits that hold you, with presence that cannot be bought or broken. You return with a deeper sense of what this life is and what it is not. You return not because you are finished, but because you are ready to go further. This is the eternal journey. The path of returning, the path of remembering, the path of living in such a way that nothing is wasted. Not your pain, not your discipline, not your silence. It all becomes part of something whole. So when you are tired, return. When you are lost, return. When you are tempted to let go, to collapse, to conform, return. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs you, anchored, awake, alive.